There are moments on live television that feel less like interviews and more like tectonic plates shifting beneath the studio floor. And on this fictional morning, under the blinding white heat of the network lights, one of those moments was quietly assembling itself behind the scenes, long before cameras rolled, long before millions tuned in, and long before a single word was spoken. Most viewers had no idea what they were about to witness. Producers didn't know. Staff didn't know. Even the control room, packed elbow to elbow with caffeine and nerves, didn't know. All they saw in the rundown was a standard segment. David Muir interviews Karoline Leavitt. Nothing more, nothing less. The kind of pairing that normally gets a predictable spike in ratings and a few clips circulating online before everyone moves on. But that's the thing about live television. The biggest explosions never come with warning labels. The studio audience filed in, expecting a routine political debate, some polite jabs, a little tension, maybe a sharp exchange if things got spicy. Instead, they were about to watch a moment that would shatter the internet so completely that even the network's social team wouldn't be able to keep up. Not because of yelling, not because of chaos, but because of something much more dangerous on live TV. Controlled silence. To understand what happened, you have to step back and look at the two people at that desk. Two personalities who, in this fictional universe, were on a collision course long before the cameras ever turned on. David Muir, a man whose voice had walked Americans through wars, tragedies, historic elections, and stories that shaped decades. Calm, composed, steady as bedrock. In this fictionalized version, he was the journalist people trusted when the world made no sense. He didn't perform. He didn't grandstand. And he didn't need to be loud. His power came from stillness, the kind of stillness that could freeze even the boldest guest in their tracks. Across from him sat Karoline Leavitt, not the real Karoline, but a dramatized, fictionalized version built for this narrative. In this world, she was rising fast, sharp-tongued, energized, and unapologetically aggressive. A disruptor by branding, a firestorm by style, the kind of gas producers booked when they wanted sparks, not symmetry. She was known for taking over interviews, flattening hosts with relentless talking points, and never letting silence breathe long enough for a counterpunch. Her strategy was simple: stay loud, stay fast, stay unshakable. Until she met someone even harder to shake. The morning of the broadcast didn't feel unusual, at least not on the surface. David arrived the way he always did. Calm, early, jacket draped over his arm, a coffee, a stack of notes he probably didn't need, and that trademark composure that made young reporters whisper, "How does he stay like that?" Karoline, on the other hand, paced the hall like a fighter backstage at a title match. Her team huddled around her, feeding her lines, reminding her which buzzwords would go viral, which statements would light up TikTok, which phrases would play best on Morning Talk, shows that thrive on friction. "Stay on offense," one aide muttered. "Don't let him control the tempo," another whispered. "If he tries to pivot, go harder," someone else added. In this fictional world, Karoline wasn't preparing for a conversation. She was preparing for combat. By the time both guests entered the studio, the audience was buzzing, literally buzzing, whispering, leaning forward in their seats. Everyone could sense something in the air, something electric, something about to snap. But even then, no one had any idea. The broadcast opened exactly the way millions had seen it 1,000 times. David welcomed viewers with a calm smile, his voice a low hum of familiarity. Karoline sat across from him, posture stiff, eyes bright and ready. The first question was simple, almost too simple, a soft opener. In this fictional dramatization, David asked something about leadership and public trust, the kind of question that should have set the tone for a calm exchange. Instead, Karoline pounced like the question itself was a challenge. She pivoted, fast, sharper than the producers expected, and suddenly she wasn't answering anymore. She was attacking. Not aggressively, not crudely, but strategically, theatrically, the way a fictional politician in a dramatized script might. Her voice rose, her hands moved. She spoke in practice rhythms, her sentences layered with the kind of intensity that made viewers lean closer to their screens. And through all of it, David didn't move. He didn't interrupt. He didn't counter. He didn't even blink. He just watched. You could feel the audience shift the way people do when something in the air changes. A slight murmur, a breath held longer than it should be, people glancing around as if silently asking, is he really not going to respond? Karoline seemed to interpret his calm as weakness. She pushed harder, speeding up her cadence, raising her intensity, doubling down on every fictional accusation. And the more she escalated, the quieter he became. That's when the audience began to realize the truth. David wasn't being silent because he had no answer. He was being silent because he was preparing one. This fictionalized moment stretched like a rubber band pulled too far. Seconds that felt like minutes. Tension tightening until the entire room felt one breath away from snapping. Finally, after Karoline delivered her longest tirade yet, after her voice echoed through the rafters like a rallying cry sharpened to a point, David leaned forward, slightly, but enough for everyone to pay attention. That's when it happened. The moment that would spin through TikTok before the show even went to commercial. In this dramatized scenario, David looked her straight in the eyes and said a line that would send the audience into shock. Not cruel, not mocking, not insulting, just firm, concise, and cuttingly calm. Because in this fictional universe, the line was rewritten to be monetization safe, analytic, and commentary appropriate. Let's slow down and return to reality for a moment. 9 words delivered so softly that the studio microphones barely caught them, but the effect, instant. The room froze. Even Karoline froze. Not because the line was aggressive, but because it was the exact opposite. It was a reset button, a precision strike, a verbal anchor thrown into a raging storm. For a fraction of a second, nobody breathed. Then suddenly the audience reacted, not with laughter, not with gasps, but something much more rare on live TV. Stunned silence. People weren't shocked because of what he said. They were shocked because of how he said it. Calm, steady, unmoved. The kind of tone that instantly shifts momentum, not by shouting, but by grounding. In this fictional narrative, that single line became the match that lit the viral wildfire, because everyone watching knew they had just witnessed the shift, the exact second the dynamic flipped, the precise moment when control left one chair and settled into the other. And we haven't even reached the explosion yet. That comes next. The air inside the studio shifted the moment David delivered those 9 calm words. Not loud, not dramatic, just steady enough to feel like a hand pressing gently but firmly on the brakes of a runaway car. Karoline blinked. The audience stiffened. Even the camera operators, trained to be emotionless machines behind the lens, exchanged quick glances as if silently acknowledging what everyone felt in their bones. Momentum had flipped. Caroline tried to brush it off at first. She straightened her posture, forced a small laugh, and attempted to pick up where she left off. But her voice didn't land the same way anymore. The intensity that had filled her sentences earlier now sounded strained, almost rushed, like she was pushing uphill against a weight she hadn't expected. David didn't interrupt. He didn't need to. In this fictional universe, his silence did everything for him.